everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we are continuing with my Minecraft archaeology series by building the Nazca Lines in southern Peru. I am super excited about this site for a whole bunch of reasons, so let's just dive in. The Nazca Lines are a huge number of geoglyphs, or designs that are made by people using geological materials, that are located in the Sechura desert of southern Peru. The Nazca Lines are mostly lines, as the name suggests, but there are also over 70 animal and plant shapes, including a spider, a condor, a heron, a hummingbird, a monkey, a lizard, a dog, and even a whale. These lines date from 500 BC to 500 AD and were largely created by the Nazca culture, which was dominant in the area from 100 BC to 800 AD. They span an area of about 450 square kilometers, or 170 square miles, and the combined length of the lines is over 1,300 kilometers, or 800 miles. So how did the Nazca make these lines, which, by the way, can be seen from space? Well, the Sechura desert, especially the area containing the Nazca Lines, is a very arid place. It is a desert, after all. The soil is mostly a light-colored clay that is covered with dark, iron oxide-rich pebbles and gravel. To make the lines, the Nazca cleared the area of those darker pebbles and scraped the gravel away to reveal the light-colored clay underneath. Some of the lines didn't need all that much scraping, maybe about 10 centimeters or 4 inches, but some of the lines are up to 30 centimeters or 12 inches deep. That explains the lines, but not the large number of enormous animal and plant drawings, pretty much all of which are done with a single continuous line per drawing. How did they make those drawings, especially the ones that aren't visible from nearby hills? It turns out that it's not as complicated as you might think. Really, they could do it with rope, sticks, the general principles of geometry, and also landscape-based survey. And we know this because in the early 1980s, a small team led by Joe Nickel actually recreated the giant condor glyph using only string, stakes, and their knowledge of manual landscape survey techniques, which is so cool. Nickel suggests that the techniques were first tested on drawings on the hillsides so that the results could be viewed from the ground. Then, after a few drawings had been done, people would have developed a technique for creating the design that doesn't require somebody standing at the bottom of the hill and having to shout, "Yup, looks good to me." He also noted that while you might not be able to see the entirety of some of the largest figures, like the condor, from the ground, you absolutely can see entire portions of it and recognize it for what it is. And Nickel's father actually tested this by bringing a biologist friend of his to the site without mentioning what it was or what they had done, so he had no knowledge that this was a Nazca line drawing, and the friend immediately identified the glyph as the Nazca condor. So now we know how they were made, but how did the lines survive for 2,000 plus years? I can scrape away the stones from the top of my garden all I want, but there is no way it is lasting that long. In this case, the plateau where the Nazca Lines are is not just incredibly dry, so there's almost no rainfall, it's also basically windless. Basically nothing really moves on the plain where the glyphs are. On top of that, the light-colored clay that was exposed to make the lines is clay. It gets exposed to the morning mists of the region every single day, which then quickly dry out in the desert sun. The semi-moist clay effectively bakes, forming a hardened layer just on top of the lines themselves and protecting them even further. All that said, these lines are incredibly fragile. You can't actually visit the site in person to walk around because footprints would damage most of the lines. If you want to see these lines as a tourist, you'll either have to climb the nearby hills or charter a private flight. Recently, certain parts of the site have been damaged by quarrying machinery in 2013, and by a confused truck driver in 2018, although the most notable recent damage was actually done by Greenpeace activists in 2014, when they set up a banner just under the hummingbird's beak in an attempt to bring attention to the climate crisis. Quick side note on this, I am all for defending the environment. I just also advocate for being aware of and respecting heritage sites in the process. At this point, you're probably asking one big question. Why? Why carve so many lines into the dirt, and why the animal and plant motifs? Those are excellent questions, and to be honest, archaeologists are still not super sure about the answer. But just because we aren't sure about the answer doesn't mean we don't have a bunch of thoughts. Paul Kosok, Richard Shadle, and Maria Reiche, who were the first archaeologists and academics to study the lines in earnest, suggested in the early 1940s that the lines were largely astronomical markers. Maria Reiche realized that some of the lines converge on the horizon at the time of the southern hemisphere's winter solstice, and others seem to track movements of certain stars or planetary bodies. The difficulty with this theory, though, is that many of the lines don't match up with astronomical entities, and it doesn't explain many of the animal or plant glyphs, so it explains potentially some of the lines, but not nearly all of them. Some academics have suggested that the lines are to do with agriculture and irrigation, although the evidence for that is pretty slim. The Nazca are well known in archaeology for developing puquios, which are subterranean aqueducts that are used to transport water long distances underground. That way, the least amount of water is lost to evaporation from the desert sun. If the Nazca could transport water underground, why the lines up above? And even if some of the lines did correspond to irrigation, what about all of the other lines? Surely there aren't that many irrigation lines running through this desert plain. Still, other academics say that the lines are primarily religious or spiritual, that the glyphs were created that way to be seen from the sky where the gods were. The difficulty here is that without written records of what the Nazca belief system was, there's not huge amounts of evidence that that's actually the intention behind the lines. We can suggest that all we want, but without other evidence that that is definitely the case, it's still more or less a suggestion. In all honesty, it's entirely possible that the lines are a combination of at least the astronomical marker theory and the spiritual theory, but also possibly the irrigation theory as well. There's no rule or anything saying that every single line and glyph in the plateau had to be made for the same reason. Some might have served one purpose and others might have served another. But the bottom line here, honestly, is that archaeologists aren't super sure why the Nazca made these glyphs. At least not yet, and it's been a major question in archaeology for a very long time. All that said, there is still a ton of archaeological research happening around the site, even though we can't necessarily get there in person. In fact, between 2006 and 2012, over 100 new geoglyphs were identified, and the discovery of another 143 glyphs were announced in 2019 by Yamagata University and IBM Japan. As we uncover more of the glyphs, and as we begin to understand more of the Nazca culture and peoples more generally from other Nazca sites, we'll get closer to understanding why these lines were created. And that's it for the Nazca Lines. If you enjoyed the video, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe down below. Also, if you're interested in using this build in your own Minecraft world, or you'd like some extra information about the site, or you just want to support the channel, check out my Ko-fi page and membership options by clicking the link in the description down below. That's all from me for today. Thank you all for tuning in, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye!